Howdy, folks. Welcome back to The Pulse. My name is Matt, and this is Crypto Heartbeat, and it is 2:30 Central Texas time. Do not let your heart be troubled. People hitting me up. What do you think, Crypto Heartbeat? It's a big day. It is a big day. Folks, how do you survive a heart attack? How do you survive it? Right? Panic. That's something that you should be concerned about, right? You got pain in your chest. I think a lot of people had that kind of feeling today when they discovered the news from the SEC of Richard Hart. Now, for those of you who've been paying attention for quite some time, I think you're not really totally surprised that this has happened. And that's okay, because one of the cool things we're going to do today is we're going to actually hear from Richard Hart himself about the SEC. We're going to talk about these things because, folks, it's almost inevitable that we would go through this. Partly because why did we get into this? Why are people after it? You know what? There's a lot of people in this world that don't like you winning. They don't like you winning, right? Everybody wants to to try to protect you. What's funny is they promote all the time on television sports gambling. Do you think people get wrecked sports gambling? Yes, they do. They get wrecked trading. They get wrecked with so many different things. And so what's amazing to me is there's no surprises, right? And there are no more oh no's, right? I swear to you, Gary Gensler must be like a silent executive producer on the highest of stakes. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he's like one of these guys. He's in the background. He's like, man, if I do this lawsuit, maybe this will promote people going to this movie. But folks, we're going to be talking today about the SEC and the charges against Richard Hart. But we're going to listen to Richard Hart first, because I think that's going to give you a really good perspective. Because here's the thing, I've said it before, there's no such thing as bad press, right? You know who Richard Hart is. You've been involved in this since the beginning. You've seen all this stuff. You weren't attracted to this because it wasn't a dumpster fire. You were attracted because it was different. But then you listened carefully to what was going on. And folks, the battle we have is not between flesh and blood. There's so much more at stake here, folks. And if you have listened to Crypto Heartbeat in the past, you know that that is the truth. This is a much, much, much bigger battle. And it's really a battle for the new economic order. Is the new economic order going to be controlled by centralized parties, or is it not? Now, has Richard Hart attracted a lot of attention? You betcha. You betcha he has. But has he attracted the attention from the fancy watches or from the building of products and projects and supporting the very core tenets of freedom and sovereignty? And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about freedom and sovereignty. But you know what's funny is, as soon as all this stuff happened, this was inevitable. This time was inevitable. It's very difficult to be successful innovator and not have people come after you, because it's threatening to people. Because this isn't really about Hacks or Richard Hart. It's just another person. It could be, you could insert any name here. What is their goal? Their goal isn't particularly Richard Hart, right? It's actually this idea that we can't let the people have their own money. That's really what this is all about. It's all about your ability to have sovereignty over value in community. And if it wasn't for Satoshi and the white paper, if it wasn't for, cryptography, If it wasn't for the crypto anarchists, we wouldn't be in the situation where there's an opportunity to take it back, because this is the first time in human history where political power and financial power get separated. And the central parties do not like that. They do not like that at all. So do not let your hearts be troubled, folks. Please, please, please. Now, let's listen to see what Richard Heart. I put this on 1.5, I think, just to make it a little quicker. But let's go ahead and listen to the man himself as it relates to the SEC. You may have seen this, a hat tip to K4K Crypto, because he's the guy that pulled this clip. Let's check it out.
The United States government, every once in a while, tries to help its citizens not get screwed, which is nice. That's nice for government to do. And so historically, people would get screwed by schemes where people would say they were going to do one thing and then do a different thing, and then people would lose money. So basically, they created a branch of the government called the Securities and Exchange Commission that tries to help people not get scammed. And I think they forget that that's what they're supposed to be doing. Like, that's the reason they exist, is to stop people from getting scammed. But then they get caught up in the intricacies of the laws, and then they don't think about whether they're really getting the job done. How many of these rug pull guys have been indicted? Not a single one that I'm aware of. And how many people have lost money to rug pulls? Oh God. Squid Game. It's worth 4.3 trillion. It went to zero. I do so much to try and protect people from getting scammed, and it saddens me to see them attacking people that aren't scamming. We have no shortage of real scams in crypto. If your employer doesn't pay you properly, do you call the Securities Exchange Commission? Nope. Why? Because they are not empowered with regulating business employee relationships. What if your bank doesn't pay you what they're supposed to? What if they double charge you, like Bank of America, or rather Wells Fargo? I think it was Wells Fargo. They got fined massively for billing people for stuff they didn't sign up for. Do you call the SEC? No, you don't. You call your state attorney general. So what is this little sliver of stuff that they're supposed to cover? Regulate securities. Okay, well, what are securities? Securities are when you put your money into a common pool with the expectation of profit solely from the work of others. The Securities and Exchange Commission has tried to water it down with things like, is there critical entrepreneurial effort? Is there critical managerial effort? And what does critical mean? It means without it, the stuff fails. Fails. Critical. And so these words critical and solely are very, 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 very important. If you paint your house, did you put money into a common pool? Well, yeah. I mean, you bought your paint, everywhere else did. Okay. Did you have expectation of the profit of work of others? Well, I mean, you painted your own house. It wasn't really others, it was you. Okay. And that's it. Like, so when you paint your house, you expect a profit from it. Now you've got a nice painted house. Now your house is worth more. Cool. Good for you. SEC doesn't regulate that. They don't regulate you improving your house. They don't regulate someone else improving your house, by the way. You pay some guy to paint your house. Is that a security? Nope. You buy a baseball card. Security? Nope. You buy a Ferrari, goes up in value. Security? Nope. You buy gold, goes up in value. Security? Nope. So what's a security? If you're doing the work and someone else isn't doing the work, then you violated that solely part, and it shouldn't be a security. If there's no common pool, it shouldn't be a security. And when I say shouldn't, I mean the Howey test states that every single leg has to pass or it's not a security. So you have to put money into a common pool with the expectation of profit solely from the work of others. They added on this non-judicial stuff with entrepreneurial effort and critical managerial effort. And then there's also some family likeness thing. But the family likeness thing just basically means, like, in theory, you should be regulated as whatever your thing is most similar to. Let's take a look at Hex. You buy Hex. Where'd you buy it from? A common pool? Nope. Most people, I think, buy on Uniswap. Where are the coins coming from? Everybody else that uses Uniswap. It's like a flea market. And are you expecting profit from the people that you bought from? One, you don't even know who they are, unless there's someone like, I don't know who any of the people on Uniswap are. Does anyone else know? I don't think. And do you expect profit from these people you don't even know who they are? I can expect stuff from people you don't even know who they are. You don't know if they're people. You just be machines. You just be bots. You be AI. You have no idea. If there was profit, is it solely from them? Well, no. You ran your own code to perform that transaction to make those coins come to you. You had to do work to move those coins, or else they couldn't possibly move. You, as the person that's transacting on Uniswap, are running all the code. Without you running the code, ain't nothing happening. Where's the common pool? No common pool. It's a million different people. Where's the expectation of profit from the work of others? Who's doing work? You're the only one doing the work. And then like, some of the stuff's so obvious. Like, okay, so let's just say Hex in general. Is there a Hex building somewhere? Nope. Is there a Hex office? No. Is there a Hex marketing team? No. Is there a Hex CEO? No. Is there a Hex company? No. Oh, okay. So who are you expecting profit from? Doesn't make sense. Hex is the silliest thing to ever screw with, because it's the least security thing in the whole game. I die, Hex.com goes offline. You go to backuphex.com, hardhex.xyz, apphex.win, staker.app, etherscan.io, write contract. Okay.
Tshare.app. I made that one.
There you go. Right?
It's a front end for Hex.
Nice, dude. Good job. I didn't even know it existed. And this is what actual decentralization looks like. These are entirely different code bases run by entirely different people on entirely different infrastructure that have no relationship to each other. I don't even know about half of them. So it can't get more decentralized. And by the way, as far as decentralization goes, we're not even on any big exchanges. All of the trading is decentralized. It is nonsensical to attack Hex from a critical managerial entrepreneurial effort thing. It doesn't make any sense. There's no building, there's no people, there's no nothing. It's just code. It sits there, and it would just sit there dead and dormant, except people run it themselves. They decide to do their own work and run the code themselves. That's effort of themselves. It's just like drawing a picture of a pony. Hey, I drew a picture of a pony. Used to be just pencil and paper. Drew a pony picture. Now I have one. Is there security? And then when you mine your own coins, what's the difference? Tell me the difference between you mining your own coins and drawing a pony picture. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And the concept that anyone try and tax you on drawing your own pony picture is crazy to me. And that's another thing that's coming up. You can't, if I draw a pony picture, you're not supposed to tax me on that. And if I do some math and mint some more quote coins, which are just like ledger entries in some global shared database thing, should I be taxed on that? What's the difference? What's the difference between me doing some math and writing down a number in a public ledger and me just drawing a pony picture? They both take effort. They're both recorded somewhere that you can see. Like Hex is the strongest. It launched totally sufficiently decentralized. It has had forever many multiple front ends. It has no building. It has nobody working for it. It makes you no promises whatsoever. What do you want? It's drawn pony pictures, except you're minting quote coins, which are just ledger entries. I don't know how one would try to successfully attack it. So you don't have common pool. You don't have managerial entrepreneurial effort. You don't have expectation of profit from the work of others. What's left? That's like every possible thing. Oh, okay, let's go family likeness test. What's it most similar to? Bitcoin. Except instead of blowing up the environment to make coins, you just lock your coins up for a while. You can lock them up for a day. Okay, great. Everyone says Bitcoin's not security. Sweet. So like we just win on like every single possible front.
We just win on every possible front. Well, you know what? If they want to come after you, they'll come after you. But I think that's a really important thing to note here. The charges, so the SEC charges, these are alleged, right? I think it's really important to note this is a civil suit. This is not a criminal. This has not been referred to the Department of Justice. This is a regulatory body called the Securities and Exchange Commission. So let's look at what it says, and we'll talk about that. And maybe a guest will come on here in a little bit and give us some more detail. But let's take a look at what the actual press release, because we have to promote these things, right? SEC charges Hex founder Richard Hart with misappropriating millions of dollars of investor funds. Okay, so that's the headline, and understand language matters here. So they're saying he misappropriated millions of dollars of funds. Now, if you're going to charge and you're going to accuse somebody of that, you got to be able to prove it. Okay, from unregistered crypto asset securities offering that raised more than $1 billion. Well, that's a reference to the Pulse Chain or Pulse X sacrifices. Okay, so this is misappropriating funds. Well, if you dig into things, and big hat tip to Brandon from Rags to Riches, if you want to go through the entire document, Brandon did an incredible job. But one of the things to point out here is that the SEC also charged Hart and Pulse Chain with fraud for misappropriating at least $12 million of offering proceeds to purchase luxury goods, sports cars, and all that stuff. Okay? All right. So, folks, let's talk about this. I've mentioned this many times on my channel, that if you think about what is crypto, let's start there. Do you own crypto? Well, where is crypto? You think about your wallet, and I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding that they have coins on their wallet. You do not have coins in your wallet. You think you do. You do not. You have the keys to be able to edit the blockchain. Crypto doesn't sit in a wallet. Your keys to access your coins sit in your wallet. That's what it is. It's keys. Well, one of the things in the law, and this is where it's going to get really, really interesting, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, but if you think about this, well, possession's kind of 9/10 of the law, right? This idea that if I had something, right, I took something, you could come and seize it. Well, let's just kind of use this theoretically. If I memorized my seed phrases, one, how do you prove that it's mine? If I have the right to remain silent and I don't tell you what my seed phrases are, you have to prove that they're mine. How do you prove that a wallet is someone's address? Well, think about how the law is supposed to work. They're demanding a jury trial. These are people, right? A jury of your peers. You're going to have to convince people that are non-technical that someone actually owns a wallet. Because here's the thing, it's just the access to the tokens, right? So in a way, you don't have possession of crypto. Most people think they do. They're like, oh yeah, my tokens are in my wallet. They're not in your wallet. They're on the blockchain, folks. That's where they are. That's the code of your wallet designated those tokens to be able to do what you will with. Now, it looks like they're in your wallet because it shows a number and it shows an amount and all that, but technically they're not there. You have the keys to it. So the interesting thing about this is, how do you prove possession? Especially if something is a non-KYC wallet. I can understand a KYC wallet where you went through, let's say, Coinbase, and you went in and you put money in from your bank account and it went into a wallet. I get it. And then you transfer that to a MetaMask wallet. I can see how you could have the chain of custody there. But it's going to be a challenge, and there are ways to do it. But proving these things outside of this case is going to be a big issue in the future, is how do you actually own something, especially a non-KYC wallet that's just numbers. Now, you might be able to imply or infer something through an IP address or something like that. But at the end of the day, but I digress. So how do you survive a heart attack? Well, one of the things that's interesting is the timing of everything. It's not lost on me. This is a really interesting time. So let's compare Richard Heart to Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried is a criminal, right? He actually stole money from people, right? So let's talk about this. Did Richard Heart take anything from anyone? No, that's why it's not a criminal case. We willingly gave Richard Heart money, but did we give Richard Heart money? I don't know. How do we know that Richard Heart controls those wallets? You're going to have to prove that. See, that's the interesting about decentralization is, and how darn smart Richard Heart is. We understand what you imply, but what can you prove? And I think that that's part of the reason that Richard has not been streaming, right? He knew that this was coming. But here's the thing that I think is really interesting. There's this amazing, strange fairness in the cosmos, right? In creation. And, there are those who are battling for good and for evil, and, pride cometh before a fall. I get it. But all of these things end up working themselves out in a really interesting way. And so I'm going to give you my perspective on that. We need somebody who can go to the mat for us. We need somebody who will go through the mat for us. Well, who do you want in your corner? Because whether it's Richard Heart or somebody else, they're going after DeFi. Right? Now, is Richard Heart a lightning rod? Absolutely. Right? You do all those things and flashy stuff, you might tick off some people. I'm sure there are some folks who were hexagons who called up the SEC. I'm sure there's some people who are very upset with Richard Heart. I know some of them. But at the end of the day, that's not the activity that he's accused of, right? So when you accuse somebody of this, it has a chilling effect, whether it's true or not. And so damage gets done. It was interesting. Freddie Quotes put up a message on Twitter that basically said the SEC's done more to affect my investments than, Richard Heart has ever done. And that's true, right? Trying to create this chilling effect. Why? Because it's a broader scale war than going after Hex or XRP or something. This is a battle for who's going to control money in the future. And they know that Pandora's box is open. And it opened with Bitcoin. But they've been able to kind of get the hash power and get kind of control of this, and BlackRock and institutions finding a way to control this once decentralized thing. Well, they don't want other people building any community. They don't want a bunch of people joining forces and working with an immutable contract. Why? Because we need to control this, not them. One of the things that I think is really important is Richard said many times, if I die, you can go on the blockchain and use a number of different front ends or Uniswap, or Etherscan, and you can call the contract and you can do business on that immutable contract on the blockchain. That's amazing. And if you didn't think that Richard Heart is smart, the most important thing for Pulse Chain is that these kind of things have to happen, folks, if we're going to have something that stands up against the powers that want to centralize. Are we going to have a layer one that is truly decentralized, meaning appropriately decentralized, where you don't have some business somewhere that you can go and take all the computers and knock on the door, right? That's the beauty of the blockchain. And Richard Heart understands that more than anyone. So here's the thing. You know as well as I do that validators and the machines running the code, I guarantee you they're not sitting on a public cloud. Actually, I know for a fact they're not sitting on a public cloud. So here's the interesting thing. So Richard Hart goes away. We never hear from him again. Okay. So we got work to do. Folks, think about this for a second. It's penalizing people for being creative. And when you do things that don't have regulatory, you're in a gray area. I get it. But here's the thing, folks. Everybody wants to hit the leader on the head in hopes that the sheep will scatter. The sheep ain't scattering, folks. That's the beauty of this, is that what we're actually battling is really about freedom and sovereignty. And I've seen it all along. Richard Hart is that one. Now, here's the interesting thing. I kind of hope this all ultimately goes to trial. And I would love to be in the room to hear the arguments, because it's going to be really difficult for people to say. Because, okay, you're going to have to prove that Richard Hart actually got that money from sacrifice money, right? Now, they might see, well, he did these transactions. He bought this big diamond. He bought these cars and all that. Yeah, he did. He bought these, and it's funny. It's $12 million on $1 billion. It's really interesting to me. The question is, what about all the money that Richard Hart made from providing liquidity on all kinds of different pairs? What about the money that Richard Hart had prior to from all of his other investments, right? And there's a lot of things that I know in that, folks, anyone can sue you. You got to understand that. And Richard Hart, I think, has definitely been a lightning rod and has attracted a lot of attention. And there's all kinds of people out there that are trying to dance on their grave. But here's the thing. I believe that this will be our finest hour. Why do I believe it'll be our finest hour? Because someone has to stand up to the giant. Somebody has to. And I think Richard Hart's just about the right person to do that. What do I mean by that? Well, a long time ago, I had an attorney friend who said to me, hey, there's a lot of gray areas in the law, but here's the problem. You don't want to get sued when you don't have the ability to defend yourself. And what does that mean? Getting sued when you're poor sucks. And that's how people basically drain you dry. One thing I know about Richard Hart is he has the resources to defend himself. Well, what does that mean? It's the best thing that really could happen to all of decentralized crypto. It's going to set a precedent if it goes to trial. But here's the thing. They have a big case to prove. And maybe they have it. Okay, so you misappropriated funds, right? Okay. There's not a class action lawsuit from the people who sacrificed. It was very clear that this was a gift that we were giving, right? I understand that you say you didn't register as security. I get it. Pay the fine. Let's move forward. Okay? This whole misappropriating thing, but it just goes to show you that we're using essentially the regulatory environment as a way to create a chilling effect on all sorts of people out there, right? And I think one of the things they might establish, right, is that what was the intent of this? Because what they're trying to say is, hey, this sacrifice was an ICO. And if you weren't paying attention and didn't think that that could be read that way, you were not smart, one, or paying attention. It's the first thing I thought of. Part of the reason that we did the donation phase for a nonprofit organization and 100% of the money went to them, because we knew that this would be an issue. You might say it's a sacrifice and get points, but at the end of the day, it's, looks like a duck and smells like a duck. The question, though, is ultimately, when all the arguments are done, will a jury of your peers actually see that that's the case? Because that's why it's not about Hex, and that's why it's not about Pulsechain, right? People love to take people down. And, guys like Eric Wall who are dancing on Richard's grave, he has no idea what service Richard is providing for him. And I think one of the amazing things about this is that ultimately, this is going to drive amazing press. And who is going to benefit the most is the highest of stakes people. Because, folks, we're getting the viral moment. It's probably not the way you wanted it to happen, but it's this idea of, well, what is DeFi and how is it different than CeFi? And how is Richard Hart different than Sam Bankman-Fried? And it's not going to be clarified anytime soon. But that's the thing that gets worked out of this. I want you to understand, folks, I'm not in this for, just Richard Hart, but I understand what his whole mission is. He understood what the cypherpunks understood from the beginning, is that this can free the damn captives. And what I mean by this, DeFi can free the captives. Hex is one example of that. But if we just fold like a card table, come on, people. And the best time for this to happen is in the bear market. But what I don't want to have happen is what happened with XRP, the 2 years. It lasts for 2 years. And for the next 2 years, it's just caught up in the middle of that and there's uncertainty. Or does this get resolved quickly? But it's one of those things where, you know what? Richard's in it for the glory. How could this potentially turn out for him to be beneficial? And you're like, well, it doesn't seem like it right now. I'm scared, right? People are like, oh no. Well, and other people are like, yeah. What do they say about when blood's in the streets? Here's your black swan event, folks. Congratulations. And you're surprised? I mean, we had advance warning of about a year on this. The point, though, is, there's a stigma, and that's really, in my opinion, what they want to accomplish. They want a stigma to be on Richard Hart and Hex and all that. And of course, is that anything new to us? A stigma around Hex? People thinking Richard's strange? Heck, we've been living with that. Folks, you got to be able to read between the lines. I look at this, and as a founder and a builder in the Pulse Chain community, I want opportunity. I think Richard Hart has given us a gift. He's given us a gift because there's somebody actually out there that's not going to, one, he's not going to fold, but two, he's not going to bow down just because, there's a regulatory group that's saying, hey, no, all right, fine, give me my day in court. Let's get through this. Let's actually decide this. And wouldn't it be incredible? Maybe it's called the Hart Rule. Wouldn't that be cool? The Hart ruling. Wouldn't that be great for Richard Hart? That what the case and what comes out of this is actually what establishes DeFi crypto. It's possible. Now, there's plenty of people out there that are naysayers who are like, oh, man, they just destroyed. I told you so. Yeah, well, you haven't actually been paying attention to what Richard Hart's really saying. You just don't like it that he rubbed your nose in it. I don't really like it either, the style. But you know what I think is amazing? He said, the old me's dead, right? The one you see in the movie is dead, and there's this new birth of Richard Hart. Well, he knew what was coming. I'm really excited about it. This is his opportunity to truly be the defender and advocate and the elder statesman. This is it. You got to go through this stuff. But folks, have you ever learned? Do you learn stuff by winning? No, you learn stuff by losing. You learn stuff through the crucible of pressure. This is what it's all about. But here's the cool thing. As this passes, because all things will pass, is the Hex contract something that's worth engaging in? Whether it's on the Pulse Chain or it's on Ethereum, because you can't do anything with it. SEC can't take it down. It's impossible. So, okay, does it help you accomplish the thing you want to accomplish? Well, guess what, folks? It's accomplished this much with what? 150,000 holders? Maybe 350,000 wallets? Do you know how small of an audience that is to create that much value? That's how powerful this thing is. And so if you're somebody that's out there building on the Pulse Chain, all that, do not be alarmed. These things are temporary. The battle is for the sovereignty of our own value in community and in agreement. It's our own agreement. What is fiat currency? The government's agreement with us. What if we made an agreement with each other? That's what we're doing in DeFi. We're making an agreement with each other. It's like me going on to Craigslist and selling you a bicycle. And you're like, hey man, will you take, I'm listing it for $200. And you're like, hey man, will you do we do 150? It's my boy's birthday. And he's 8 years old and he's never had a bike before. And you come up and the boy's in the car back there. And, you came out of this old ratty car and I got this bicycle that I bought for my son, years and years ago. And here's this guy coming up and he goes, hey man, will you take 150 for it? And I go, you know what? You can have it. What? No, I'll give you 150 for it. No, I want it to be a blessing to you. Value is determined by parties. We have the ability to agree whether we charge more or less or give it away. That's our business. The SEC is just there to protect people. I get it. But here's the thing that I think is amazing, is that we're the ones that give government its authority. The authority actually rests in us. We created these things to hopefully protect ourselves, and they've gotten out of control. And we still have the authority, and we will change the rules. And folks, that's the thing you got to understand. Why are we part of the Texan token stuff? Because we believe in independence. Where do good people go? I want to stand up for that stuff. This fits squarely into that. If you don't understand that all of these things are combined together, and it's not about, oh no, Richard Hart and watches, but he is actually this advocate that's going before us, and he's taking this heat. Fine. Do whatever you want with your crypto and your bag and your money. That's not what you're getting from me. What I want you to see is the actual perspective of what we're up against. This is much, much bigger. The fact that we could lose this whole thing, and I mean by that DeFi going away, that we are robbed of the ability to negotiate value between parties. I want to give you the bike. I'm not going to charge you. I see your kid. He's sitting out in the car and he has never had a bike. And my son used this bike for the last 5 years. You can have this bike. Why? Because the story changes. Do you realize value is negotiated between parties? People determine value. You negotiate value. And sometimes that value can be higher or lower. But that's what we need the right to do, the freedom to transact. So I am, alarmed as you are. How do you deal with a heart attack? How do you survive the heart attack? Well, if Richard Hart, if you're watching, I stand with you. I stand with you in this. Why? Because somebody has to stand up. Who's going to stand up, right? Do I support all the decisions Richard Hart has made? Would I make the same ones? No. I don't drink Red Bull either. But you know what? That's the thing. It takes a guy like Richard Hart to be able to stand up to this stuff, right? Look at Trump. I mean, Richard Hart is a Trump-like character. He is a disruptor and an innovator. There's nobody I would want to go the distance than Richard to do that, because all these other people are they're fair weather friends, right? They're the people like, I told you so, and dance on your grave. Here's the thing. This phoenix will rise again. And it may not be just, the price, I'm down, whatever. No, what I'm talking about is the future of decentralized finance. Will Richard Hart be a martyr on the altar of DeFi? He might be. I doubt it. But at least it's going to get its day in the sun. And at least we're going to be able to argue this one. And that's the good thing, right? The jury of your peers. Will it, what's interesting is I kind of hope it goes to a jury trial. Why? So we can actually hear these arguments rather than it just being, a fine and move on. Because Richard's got the resources to be able to mount a defense. And that defense isn't just going to be of him. It's going to be of us. And it's going to be of anyone that's involved in true immutable contracts on the blockchain with no admin keys. I hope you understand what's at stake here. It's a big deal. But that's the thing. This is an amazing time to be alive because the gains can be so good, but also it's volatile. Case in point, your emotions are volatile. What are we going to do? We're going to have a proper perspective, and we're not going to freak out about stuff, and we're going to let these things play themselves out because it's not a surprise, folks. Not a surprise at all. But a precedent will be set. And I think what's interesting is you may, attorney friends of mine have said this many times. I don't care what you think. It's what can you prove, right? People give you advice all the time. Attorneys are wrong all the time. It's really about a jury of your peers. They can come after you if they want to come after you, but they got to be able to prove it. And folks, this isn't just about Richard Hart in the SEC. This is about something much, much greater. And that is they're worried that people like you and me are going to get together. Remember Wall Street Bets? There's a reason that they were upset. Remember the hedge funds that lost everything in that short squeeze? Yeah. They don't like when we get together and talk to each other. And speaking of that, I'm about to talk to one of your favorite people. He's not only the CEO, he's the CFO, he's the CTO, he's the CMO. He's the mayor of Sassy City, the commander of couch cushion maintenance. In the islands, he's known as King Kamehameha. He's my ace in the hole. He's my Kid Creole. He's my Bob Dole. He's not internationally known, but he's also known to rock the microphone. He's the gentle ginger giant genius and the professor of potent pontification, ladies and gentlemen, Brandon from Rags to Riches.
What's up, dude?
What's up, my brother?
How's life, man?
Good, good. I learned everything from you, my son. You have treated me well. Yeah, I listened to your whole stream. I got all the good nitty gritty. I'm just a backbencher, just standing on your shoulders.
Yeah. Well, I think it was good for everybody to hear directly from the documents, because 99% of the stuff that's going to be circulating out there on Twitter from people who just don't like us is going to be lies. It's going to be false. So it's good to be armed with the truth.
Yep. Have you been paying attention to any of this stream? My case.
No, I just turned in. Just turned in.
Okay. So
Tuned in.
here's the in the nutshell. You know, I look at this as a battle that's much, much bigger, and it's really for the heart of DeFi, right? And we know about immutable contracts on the blockchain, right? But when I look at this SEC filing, this case, the headline of the press release is about the misappropriation of funds. And you think about it, it's going to take you a lot to prove that. Now, they probably have some banking records and see that the purchases were made and Sotheby's and the 555 carat diamond and all that stuff. But in a way, what is surprising to me is this isn't a class action lawsuit from a bunch of people who are sacrificers. It was very clear that people were to have no expectation. It was very much like a gift. They didn't go after the Send Foundation. You know, you look at all these things and you go, well, okay. So somebody doesn't like the optics of Richard buying stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much money that Richard could have made. I'm making the assumption by using his money to provide liquidity. There's a lot of ways to make money, and for them to be able to directly tie Brandon's sacrifice to watches when $1 billion was sacrificed and they're talking about 12.1 million, it's going to be a tough case to make. But even if they do, this is not a criminal case. And I think everybody's going to want to make Richard look like Sam Bankman-Fried. These are two different things, folks. We willingly did this. The people that got into FTX, they literally stole from people. And it's funny. I played a clip of Richard talking about, you know, there's so many real scammers out there, but they don't get indicted, right? They go after folks. And I understand why they're going after Richard, but this is going to be the battle here, in my opinion, is more for the precedent in DeFi. What are the rulings going to be about what these things are? And I think we may see Richard Hart front and center.
Guys, I mean, I think I saw Blue Bum say this on Twitter. He said, we're in the big leagues now. This is the big leagues, folks. And here's I want to make an observation of what I'm seeing on Twitter. These people really don't understand what the implications of Hex and Pulse Chain and PulseX being attacked. They can use this precedent in the future to attack anybody, folks. And it's not just about Richard. Most of the document, and if you guys didn't see on my YouTube stream, I went through everything, every single thing. Most of it was just trying to outline their case that Hex was a security. And I would say that a lot of the arguments, in my opinion, because I'm not a legal guy, a lot of the arguments seem weak based on other stuff that I've seen the SEC bring to the forefront here. And you're right, man. How, you know, my question is, how are they going to be able to prove that money that went from the sacrifice address and then went through a mixer, which many different projects use mixers, and it's not inherently illegal to use one. And then the SEC made the case that using that mixer, people didn't know that Richard was going to do that. So that's one of the accusations and things that they're levying against him, as if there's nothing illegal in doing that. But how are they going to track that money? How are they going to track that money that was mixed back to his bank account? How can they separate the money, the existing money that he already had from that stuff as well? Yeah, that's also a question. You know, there's a lot of things to bring up here too. Like, you know, Hex's development started prior to Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler got sworn in, I think, April 4th of 2021. And there was a different SEC chair at that time. So the SEC chair sees this happening with Hex and no action is taken. But now Gary Gensler wants to come through and do all this. And here's the biggest thing here for me is that the SEC has created all of these problems. There are projects out there, not just Hex and others, but are doing whatever they can to avoid being quote unquote a security because there is no clarification as to what should and what needs to be done with cryptocurrencies because it's so different.
Yep.
And it just goes back to the stoplight thing, dude. You run the intersection. 6 months later, they build a stoplight, and then you get a ticket in mail for running a stoplight that was built 6 months later.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on here, in my opinion. So I hope that crypto Twitter, I hope that there's some wise people out there that wise up to the fact that this has implications for everybody. This will be used for different cases. They talk about Uniswap a lot in that paperwork, and I don't think that was that was on purpose, in my opinion.
Yeah. Bitcoin Benito, good to see you again, man. $20 holla. Case is trash. The indictment claims Pulse Chain operated by paying 75% of Pulse tokens made through gas fees to validators. The other 25% are sent to the ETH Genesis address. No idea what the hell they're talking about. I appreciate the $20 holla. Yeah, it's interesting to say it's trash. At the end of the day, it's an accusation, right? This is allegedly these things have happened. I think what's more important is kind of what you're talking about, Rags. I think it's funny, though. We just did a private placement memorandum, and the appropriate way to disclose things is we registered with the SEC. I signed the document, sent it off, and we registered a private placement. It's a 40 to 50 page document that has all the disclosures of the risk, and you can only work with accredited investors. Okay, so what's really interesting is at the very top of that press release, and it's all about this misappropriation of funds. Well, in a PPM, if you disclose to someone, hey, Brandon, I'm going to use the money that you invest in this security, which I'm going to use it to build this business, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And then I go buy cars and watches and all this stuff. You might have a case. But here's the thing. There was no disclosure. If there is disclosure, because that's what you would do. Let's say you were coming after someone. You were an accredited investor. It was a registered security. And you said, this guy misappropriated funds. Look, it was not disclosed in the PPM. You'd have a case, right? He said he was going to do this, and he did this. Richard was very clear at the very beginning of what this was. When it comes to the disclosures to people, this is a gift that you are sending to this address. It is a sacrifice for the freedom of speech or freedom of movement. It is very clear, and those things will appear in this case. And so the people that will be on the jury will have to hear those and consider those things. Did the people think that they were getting, they thought they were going to get something, right? A no value cryptocurrency likely. But this is the speculative nature of things. They got points and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, there was to be no expectation that anything would happen. And of course, people had expectations, and they're saying at least one person in Brooklyn did. But that's the thing. There was no PPM. There were no disclosures on this. And so what the SEC is saying is, well, you were doing an ICO. Well, here's the thing. The victims, right? Are there people that are upset that are kind of going after Richard Heart like they're going after Trump? They want to do anything they can to try to take him down. That's the thing that's interesting to me about this. All they've got is, oh, well, you bought watches and you bought this stuff. Well, you're going to have to prove that, and good luck with that. This is not a class action lawsuit from a bunch of people that are in Hex and PulseX. It's not. And this is not a criminal case. So we'll see. But I think what this does is it puts, all the people that were anti-Richard Heart, are having their field day right now. But this will pass as well. But what will happen is we got a movie coming out. We've got all kinds of things happening. This is going to be, well, what's this thing? Is this guy like SBF? And what's going to be really interesting is there's going to be a tremendous amount of mileage that comes from this. Now, I guess the fear for people that are, deep into this ecosystem is, does this last so long that you miss this next bull run? I mean, there are some considerations of this. I don't know. But to me, don't think you know the outcome yet. I think it's shocking stuff, but I don't know that this is the death knell, if you will, for anything as it relates to Pulse and PulseX. Because when I look at the Pulse chain, if it is properly decentralized, because there's no Okay, so you have an injunction. Where do you go to shut it down? Where do the servers exist? I don't think that they're on AWS or public clouds. Okay, so you shut down a couple of them. I mean, Richard Hart isn't stupid enough to go, well, we're just going to put it on one server at AWS. No, it's properly decentralized. That means we have ourselves a layer one, and we need to continue to build, in my opinion. Will this be a tarnished, will this be something that, everybody will keep bringing up and again? Well, yeah, that's what they've been doing for the last 3 years about Richard. We've lived with this kind of pushback for a long time. And so the question is, will there be a place where people can transact freely without OFAC compliance, it's going to be up to us. Really, actually, Richard's handing a layer one to us, Brandon. That's how I see it.
And here's something else too, very interesting here. A lot of people were getting upset because Richard didn't talk about their thing. Are you now happy that he didn't talk about your thing?
Yeah, good point.
Are you now happy? Could you have been pulled into this? Maybe that was the reason he was doing that as well. Another thing that I want to point out, on stream, when I was going through the documentation, I pressed Control F, and I was trying to find anywhere in that documentation that they talked about the words "no expectation," and they didn't mention it anywhere. However, That's one of the most common phrases from Richard Hart of all time. Have no expectations whatsoever of anything.
Yep.
That's important, okay, because he's specifically telling people up front, no expectations. So that's interesting too. Also, you don't see the mention. I don't believe we saw the mention of the word no value. Okay, no value tokens, airdrop, whatever the case may be. I don't think we saw that anywhere either. And they omitted these things. The other interesting thing, there were no influencers implicated in this documentation, or no separate charges against these influencers. So they issued a lot of subpoenas. They did a lot of digging. So maybe Richard Hart actually didn't pay anybody, like he said. Find that interesting too. So there's a whole lot of things that are going to be coming to light here. This is massive. And guys, this is actually, when you take a step back, this is what regulatory clarity looks like. This process is difficult. If they go the enforcement route instead of collaborating with people, the enforcement route is very difficult. But this is actually providing the quote unquote clarity that the whole industry needs. And they just don't realize that this is actually what that reality looks like, unfortunately. So I think this will be very interesting to see how it shakes out with Hex, with Pulse Chain, with PulseX, with Richard. And also, I'm curious if the ruling at XRP is going to hurt the SEC's case with Hex, specifically citing the way the adoption amplifiers and things like that. I think in the documentation for XRP, they said, it wasn't an ICO unless the ICO was sold on a centralized exchange, and it wasn't. So it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out.
Absolutely. But that's the thing that, I keep coming back to, folks. I remember when all this, I mean, I was named on one of the SEC things. I got a notification. I didn't have the same,
you didn't get a subpoena though.
I didn't get a subpoena body search or anything like that. But when I first got it, I was like, hold on a second. What is this? I had to talk to my attorney about it. And he's like, no, this was just notification from Twitter. And I think about it, it's like, well, yeah, you're trying to do what's right. And, you get scared when these things happen. And so, folks, I just want you to know, I understand that you're alarmed. But the point of all of this is, all right, what is it really? Because anyone can sue anyone else. And if you think about it, Richard Hart, at the beginning of this, I played the video of him. And he said, what is the SEC? He's like, if you have a problem with your employer, do you go to the SEC to help you? No, they're a very thin regulatory body that's concerned about protecting people from scams. So the question is, what do scams have in common? They have victims. Rug pull after rug pull after rug pull, and no indictments. Even Sam Bankman-Fried gets, well, he doesn't get totally off, but that's the thing. They are reaching, and in my opinion, they think that this is low-hanging fruit, but I don't think they know who they're messing with. I really don't. Besides the fact that Richard Hart is smart, He's got the resources to go toe to toe with these folks. And because this is not criminal case, let's go toe to toe and let's see where it goes. Because somebody has to stand up for DeFi. And you think about this. What if this included Uniswap? What if the next thing is Uniswap? What if the next thing is DeFi? What if they're coming after our ability to have an agreement in community around value, and they want to control it? And so to me, in a way, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I'm not surprised one single bit. I saw this coming like years ago. But you know what? Perfect timing, right? Perfect timing. The big question is, will people actually watch that movie and actually listen to Richard Heart and what he has to say? Because this actually could be the ultimate judo move. Just when you think the hero is down, it's very possible that it could come around. And this could be the ultimate glory, which puts in Richard Heart's, in his camp, real glory, which would be true definition of what's a security or not. Because what it says to me, because they didn't go after Hex, I mean, they went after the adoption amplifier and they tried to make a case for that. But this was about sacrifice, and this was about misappropriation of funds primarily. It's going to be tough to prove those things. What do you think happens? Do you think he settles, or do you think he takes it all the way?
That's difficult, man. That's difficult to know. It depends on a lot of things. I think that for the longest time he talked about settlement as if he was prepared for that to happen. Many times on many different streams, people ask, what happens if the SEC comes after Hex? I've heard it plenty of times on his streams.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, this is what happened in the past with a lot of other projects. EOS paid $20 million to settle, and then they just carried on business as usual. Other projects did the same. So, is he prepared for that? Is that the no expectations wallet, the legal defense fund? I don't know. But it would be interesting. And here's why. If he does take this to court, what does that mean? That's a lot of publicity. That's a massive amount of publicity. If he's willing to fight this thing, if he's willing to maybe talk to the same lawyers that are defending other folks here, that have gotten some ground with the SEC. So maybe the XRP folks, or maybe the Coinbase folks are involved. Now, I don't know whether or not he's burned those bridges. Just don't know. But just make no mistake, guys. Here's what's crazy. People are applauding the SEC today when they hated the SEC yesterday because they're coming after Pulse Chain. Let's say the SEC tries to bury Hex. I don't think it's going to do. But if it does, what does that mean? Does that mean the SEC just goes away? No, they're going to come after everybody. That's why we have to understand who the common enemy is here. You got to understand that. And Matt, I've caught myself saying bad things about other projects in the past, and I really need to be careful about that because we really are on the same team. And I'll tell you this too. We reported on these cryptocurrency Bitcoin advocates going to Capitol Hill and then lobbying behind DeFi's back to get Capitol Hill to pass all the legislation to say all of DeFi is illegal.
Yeah.
We reported on that because Charles Hoskinson actually went to Capitol Hill and he reported on it. And we were talking about this months and months and months ago. Many Bitcoiners, this is the attitude that they're using. And quite frankly, folks, they are so happy that BlackRock's involved right now too.
Yeah.
BlackRock, the enemy that they touted for so many years, is now their friend, and they've switched because they think their bags are going to pump. Guys, this does not end up good for anybody. This does not end up good for Bitcoiners. Mark my words. It does not end up good for us. It ends up good for nobody. And I want to see people realize that. That's really my strong message here. The implication, the precedent that will be set.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's bad. You think it's ultimately bad? Like there's no silver lining in this?
I think no. I'm saying it's ultimately bad for regular people.
Yeah.
It's not ultimately bad for Wall Street, or not ultimately bad for institutions or governments. They want to take this over. Eventually, they're just going to be feeding us scraps if we don't do something about it. And that's what this is. And you got to remember, in 10 years, there's going to be a whole lot more people that were born on this earth. And then in 10 years after that, those people become adults. So guess what? Yeah, they're willing to make some people rich now in order to gain control and screw everybody else for the next 500 years, for example. And that
Yeah.
might be it might be 100 years, okay? But that's what we're dealing with here. And that's the perspective that we need to have on this situation. And that's why we got to rally around what's happening here, in my opinion. We got to rally around Pulse Chain and Richard. I really
Yep.
think that.
And yeah, I look at this even back out further than that and think, what an amazing time in human history. The fact that
Yeah.
you and I can be in different states and be talking as if we're in the same room. Okay. So the communication network itself, to the fact that there is an ability for us to create value and agreement in mass. And I think that it's lost on people. People don't relate to the fact that because of the communication networks, we have the ability to get on the same page financially. And we can choose what our fiat is. You know, our made up internet money is better than the government's made up internet money. Yes, that's true. And it's because of these technologies. And this is, you know, it's gotten out of the box, right? Pandora's box was open and they didn't realize its implications. And now they're just seeing it and they're trying to stuff it back in the box.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You cannot shut down Hex. You cannot shut down Texan. You cannot shut down immutable contracts on the blockchain. You can't. You cannot take down the blockchain. So is there potentially a way you can go after Pulse Chain? Maybe. But, you know, it's just like anything. It's like Al-Qaeda, man. It's like, well, you kill this cell and another one pops up. Well, whack-a-mole is only going to work because your jurisdiction is only the United States and maybe some of your friendly allies. But here's the thing. If you're trying to go after regular people, the beauty of the U.S. justice system is it's a jury of your peers. It's not regulatory people. They do not make the decisions. It's actually a jury of your peers. And that's the kind of the last defense for people who want to basically say, hey, this is what they're taking from us ultimately. You know, Richard's been amazingly prophetic when he talked about, remember when email came out? You know, it used to be illegal to read your mail. If I went and stole your mail, that's a federal offense. If I read your mail, it was in your mailbox. Hey, the ISPs can do it. People lost the concept of what that story really means. Is that because the technology advanced, well, of course, they can just keep on taking and taking and taking. They cannot take away our ability to trade. If I said to you, hey, I've got some, you know, what did you use? Bubble gum and something else. Hey, you need something I got. I need something that, you know, you need something I got. Need something that you've got. We can trade and barter. This is peer-to-peer ability to do that. And whether you take it down in the United States and push stuff offshore, fine. It is going to thrive in other places because freedom in the human heart and freedom and sovereignty of the human experience cannot be contained by men, period. They will revolt. And so this is going to come to a head, and it has to come to a head. And here we are.
We're in it.
But we've got a feature film coming out this weekend. How amazing is that timing wise? I mean, it's like you couldn't orchestrate it any better. So what I think, if the highest of stakes really was, you know, on the ball, which they likely are, exactly what you want for someone like Netflix. Hey, got all this in the news, all this stuff here. Let's put this stuff out there so you can see who this bastard is.
Yeah,
what they don't realize
it's incredible.
is
I mean, it's crazy time.
It's the ultimate. It's the ultimate
international everything.
Yeah.
It's like real-time drama. This could bring a lot of attention to this space. Why do you think that they didn't mention anything about the Sins Foundation?
Because
27 million to charity.
Because people know what a donation is, dude. When you give to a nonprofit organization, it's a donation. And there's a ton of precedent for what a donation is. I mean, frankly, that's why we did the donation phase for Texan, is because of this very issue. Our attorney said it's going to be difficult to defend a sacrifice. Don't do a sacrifice. And that's why we didn't do it, because we were concerned about this issue. But you know what? Honestly, I think that when all this is said and done, I think it's going to be commodities ultimately. And I think that we're hopefully going to see, you know, there's too many people in the government that have crypto, and there's too many people, you know, who stand to benefit from it. It's just been out in the wild long enough that there may be temporary things, but I think long term, I think this is a part of much bigger plan that really frees the captives. Honestly, now I'm really optimistic, but you know, the thing I really worry about if there's damage from this It's that the people in this community might miss the next bull run.
Yeah.
It's a slim possibility, but it's a possibility. The question is, how long does this drag itself out? But to me, how crazy. I mean, this film, this would be the time I'd be calling Netflix right now saying, listen, we got this. It's hot in the press. It's all over the news. Put this in front of people, and it's a Trojan horse, right? You think, oh, look at this guy. He's flexing all this stuff. He's just like Sam Bankman-Fried. And then you're like, hold on a second. This guy's not like Sam Bankman-Fried at all. This guy's actually talking about freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to pull up the highest of stakes right now, but they're making a comment earlier that they're working super hard right now. Thanks so much to those who've reached out about the latest news. Our team is laser focused this week on the film's premiere and making it available internationally to share this story with the world. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Really,
Wouldn't it
really
be great? Oh my gosh. If this got parlayed into that, but that's the other thing I look at is that I don't know. I feel like there's so many people that Richard's advocated for in the past. And has he done a perfect job of it? No, but it takes a personality like his to cut through the noise. And so I'm cheering him on. But here's the thing. I'd much rather be in his position, sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars to defend myself and really potentially force the SEC into a decision about what securities actually are. And if, imagine we take this to the, all the way up to the Supreme Court, wouldn't that be amazing? Can you imagine Richard Hart in, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be this case made it all the way there?
Well, one thing's for sure, we're not going to be running out of things to talk about for a long time.
Heck no. But you know what? Here's the thing, folks. This is another reason, Funding Jim was on the space yesterday, and I thought he was really cool. He's like, listen, we've got builders, we've got people, we got a layer one. Richard has said it many times. I could die and this thing would still continue. He's always made it clear that it's not contingent upon him. And so those are the rails to run on. People have accused us, oh, you're building on that. Well, it's a layer one. We're going to build on it. Let's build the infrastructure of the future of sovereignty and freedom in this world. Let's be leaders in this layer one, and let's represent freedom and sovereignty, damn it. What say you, Brandon?
I mean, we're in it, man.
Let's
you and I
go.
talked kind of privately too, and we've talked about this. This is what it's all about. This is when you got to realize that this isn't just like, it's not fun and games. This is really serious. There's major implications, and I want to point this out too. When you make big enough waves, people start to notice you, and I think that Richard made those waves, and the message that he was putting out was anti-establishment. It's an anti-establishment message.
Yeah.
And they want to silence people who do that. And that's evidence all throughout history, not just now. And especially when it comes to the money part. And especially when it comes to, BlackRock, for example, who's all in on Bitcoin right now and just shilling the heck out of it. Why do you think they're shilling the heck out of it? I think Adam from Vibra Finance made the point, and we kind of thought about it a little bit. I think that BlackRock understands the absolute horrible condition that the economy's in, and the absolute nuclear bomb that they're sitting on in terms of like mortgages and things like that. And if that was the case, what do? Well, the Bitcoin goes up at least on average 120% every year. Maybe they're looking for a way out. Maybe they're looking for money. Maybe they want to get into Bitcoin for those reasons. So interesting.
Andy Suffolk. Is this the end of Tax and Tech? Oh, my friend, it is only the beginning. What you don't realize, that's the beauty of this. What have we learned? Immutable contracts on the blockchain don't go anywhere, right? There's nothing people can do. That you can run code if you want to run code. It's just like what Richard says about Hex, right? It's not going anywhere. There's no centralized organization. There's no marketing department. There's none of that stuff. And at the end of the day, you can either use your tokens and your coins on a DApp or not. You can run things through on Etherscan if you wanted to. So that's what's cool about immutability. It's been prepared long ago that it's not dependent upon people. This is something that you do with a contract on the blockchain. And so to me, I will say that we made decisions that I'm pretty happy about. I'm glad that we did not do a sacrifice and that we did a donation phase and your money went directly to a nonprofit organization. I think that that's a smart move. But if anything, you know, I think that this is our opportunity to, Richard's going to fight the big fight, which is the SEC, and we're going to build like crazy. Right. And you know what? I'll say it again. The value in Hex was built on about 150,000 people. That's it, folks. That's it. All that value, 150,000 people. Do you know how many people are in this world? We're tokenizing communities of, TNM's 500,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about what's happening in the Philippines and the other places that we're going to go. We are not stopping, folks. If anything, we're doubling down. But this is, I think, going to ultimately bring more clarity. But folks, don't let your hearts be troubled. Realize that this is when people feel, the SEC in their mission to quote unquote protect investors, the reason that they're not clarifying things is they're worried that they won't be able to have centralized control of money in the future. If they make DeFi a commodity, just, hey, what is it? It's a commodity. Let's move forward. Basically, they lose control of the money. And I think that there's a lot of powers that do not want to lose control of the money. So to me, it's veiled in that. That's the bigger battle here. It's not about Richard and his watches. This is about the future of DeFi. And you know what? We got an election coming up, Brandon. We got an election coming up, and we've got a lot of unrest in the world. And I think that the people around the world that are watching how backwards the US is on every single topic, including financial, are saying, I mean, even the UK is making sensible regulations as it relates to this. I mean, people are like, no, well, come here, bring your value here. And you watch what Elon Musk does with this X app. You watch what he does with crypto. Folks,
there's a lot going on.
It ain't over. It ain't over.
Yeah, and know this too, folks. I made mention of this yesterday, Matt, in Twitter Spaces. I said, Matt nor I are going to tell you what to do with your money right now. You just listen to the facts and you do what's best for you and best for your family. And if you're out, cool. If you're in, cool. Even if you're out, for example, you can still support what's going on. You can still support this whole thing. So just know that we're not telling you what to do with your money, but we want to bring the facts and the data and the information. And you can check out my stream to see all of that as well. If you guys have questions about that.
Yeah, that was an awesome stream, Brandon. So he walked through every document. He read through them. I think it's a really good breakdown.
Definitions, everything.
Yeah, you went into, you actually searched the sections of the SEC code and stuff, which is really awesome. But folks, Brandon and I are here to remind you of really the right perspective. And that right perspective, in my opinion, is this is a significant time in human history. It's not about one man. It's about all of us having the ability to freely communicate, freely move, freely transact. And we want to do it on our terms, not some centralized authorities' terms. And frankly, it's because all of these things, from technology to community, coming together for the purposes of giving an even, fair foothold for everyone. What I love about immutable contracts on the blockchain is BlackRock and Brandon have the same exact position. Either one of them can engage with an immutable contract on the blockchain. You don't have favoritism because you're BlackRock. And that's what I love about the democratization of, digital currency, is that, hey, it levels the playing field for regular people. And so don't let your hearts be troubled. Brandon?
Yeah.
You've got a newsletter at dollarriot.com for folks who are, I have a feeling you're having content there, right?
Yeah, I got some content coming.
I'll bet you do. Folks, if you're not subscribed to dollarriot.com, go get that newsletter. You get some insider info from Brandon there. Brandon, thanks for joining me on the Pulse today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
You. All right, folks. Thanks for joining. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not mess with Texas or Richard Heart, because, folks, there is a lot of exciting things coming ahead. And do not lose your faith. Take care, everybody.